regarding our PDP convention that was conducted on the 15th and 16th of November this year, that is just about a month ago, is that in the eyes of the law, the convention does not exist. In other words, or better still, in the eyes of the law, convention was not conducted. And why do I say so? It's because before the convention, there are cases. There's two court judgments from the Federal High Court Abuja, and there is a state high court order, interim order from Ibadan that the PDP relied on, a group of the party relied on to go ahead with the convention. Now, if you look at the Electoral Act and the Nigerian Constitution, that's why I say, in the eyes of the law, PDP has not conducted convention. From section 1 of the Electoral Act as amended 2022 to section 152, the Federal High Court was mentioned 3 times, and in very significant areas. You look at section 29.5, you look at section 76, you look at section 84.14. There it is clear, it is specific. The Federal High Court, when you want to, you have a situation which you want the court to address. Lawyers will say leading the witness. So looking at that, you will see that the Electoral Act has done a good job by leading us to know where to seek redress from when it comes to electoral matters that affect INEC or that involves INEC. Because if you look at section 29.2, that is the only place State High Court was mentioned, one of the places, and it was only mentioned as regards to a candidate getting an affidavit to support his document, that they can get it from either a Federal High Court or a State High Court. And secondly, the other place that State High Court was mentioned was in section 132 and section 145. And it was talking about specifically local government and local government election, talking about chairmanship and councillorship. That is the only area a State High Court has jurisdiction. I don't know if you're getting me. So, looking at that, ab initio, following the judgment of the two Federal High Courts, the convention ought not to have gone ahead, because the State High Court does not have jurisdiction over that matter. Now, let me read I want to go to the Nigerian Constitution, section 251, talking about the powers or the jurisdiction of a Federal High Court. And I want to read something from there. I just want, it's important we make this clear. If you look at section 251, the last sentence, it says, the Federal High Court shall have and exercise jurisdiction to the exclusion of any other court in civil causes and matters. I want to read the definition of exclusion in legal terms. In law and constitutional context, the phrase "to the exclusion" means that a specific entity, power, or body has the sole and exclusive authority over a particular matter, preventing any other entity from exercising that power or jurisdiction. That is what it means. It said exclusive jurisdiction, when a court is granted jurisdiction over certain dispute to the exclusion of other court. It is the only court with the authority to hear and determine those specific cases. Now, section 251, subsection 1P, Q, R made it clear that it is the federal is under the purview or the jurisdiction of the Federal High Court. concerning this our convention. It's beyond the jurisdiction of the state high court. Before I want to read that, if you look at section 251, subsection 1p, it says the administration or the management and control of the federal government or any of its agency. Recall, INEC is an agency of the federal government. Now, Q said, take note of it. Subject to the provision of this constitution, the operation and interpretation of this constitution insofar as it affects the federal government or any of its agency. Now, R, it says, any action or proceeding for a declaration or injunction affecting the validity of any executive or administrative action or decision by the federal government or any of its agencies. This is the jurisdiction of the Federal High Court. So the State High Court does not have jurisdiction, and that is where the dilemma is. But there is something I also want to read, because we need to understand. They talk about, the Supreme Court and the pronouncement of this. Beautiful. Yes, the Supreme Court said the affairs of a political party is internal, the leadership and membership of a political party is the internal affairs of a political party. Yes, that is correct. Before I go to this thing, let me state it. In the case between Dahiru and Eno versus APC and others, he said this ruling reinforced that courts will not interfere in domestic affairs of a political party unless, there's a caveat, unless the party's own rules or a relevant status have been violated. And it went further to also say the judiciary will only intervene in the party if the party is found to have violated its own constitution, the Electoral Act, or the Nigerian Constitution. That is, at that point, the court can intervene. So, for those that are saying that the Supreme Court has made pronouncement, there's a caveat to that pronouncement. And that is what they fail to understand. And that is the danger we are in as a party. And until we realize that, in the eyes of the law, the convention does not exist. Now, I want to read something. The definition of jurisdiction and so on and so forth. He said, jurisdiction is vital for courts because it grants them the legal authority, in bracket, power to hear, decide specific cases, defining which court. That is definition of jurisdiction, and he went further to say that without it, a court's proceeding and judgment are null and void, as if the case was never heard, making jurisdiction the fundamental basis of judicial power. So if you look at this, then you now say that the State High Court has nothing to do with this case as regarding our convention. And there are two sections, about three sections, where in the whole of the Electoral Act, as amended 2022, it was mentioned, using it, instead of using Federal High Court, they use Court of Competent Jurisdiction. And what is competent jurisdiction? Means a court or an authority that has a proper legal power, authority, and qualification to hear and decide a specific case, type of dispute, or matter based on subject matters and geography. So when you look at all this, you see that in the eyes of the law, PDP has not conducted convention. That is one thing the Turaki-led NWC have failed to acknowledge and understand. Because visiting former head of state or former party leaders or present party leaders, beautiful, okay. But that does not validate the convention. So, and I've given us the definition of, jurisdiction and competent jurisdiction. So the State High Court does not have any jurisdiction over this matter. And the funny thing is that the Federal High Court, it was judgment. Both Federal High Court gave judgment. But the State High Court was not judgment, it was an injunction. And there is no way an injunction will supersede a judgment. That is one. Number two, by a Federal High Court that has jurisdiction as against a State High Court that does not have jurisdiction. And to worsen the matter, the State High Court judge went further when INEC lawyer requested that INEC be delisted from the case that on the basis that the state high court does not have jurisdiction over it, the judge saw it and delisted it. So that is to tell you that in the eyes of the law, PDP has not, conducted convention. And I want to urge all the parties to come to the round table in the interest of the party, in the interest of Nigeria, in the interest of our democracy, to ensure that we have a strong opposition party. The law has stated it clearly. And that is what the Constitution has said. Just like I tell you, when I speak, as you know, I don't speak my opinion, even though I have opinion. But I talk the Constitution. I speak what the Constitution says about the issue. And this is the constitutional position. In the eyes of the law, PDP has not conducted any convention.